She slept through all of it. While the sisters scrambled around the house tearing into gift bags, while mom and dad tippy-toed past her door like she was royalty, while the entire living room turned into a chaotic, laughing, arguing mess, she just lay there on her bed in complete and utter peace. Her name was Gu Cheng. She had just been returned to the Gu family after 18 years, and she had absolutely zero interest in the drama unfolding 3 rooms away. She was too busy listening to everyone's thoughts. Yes, reading minds. That was her little secret. And right now the thoughts flooding into her head were absolutely unhinged. Big sister Gu Wanqing was thinking about Gu Hua. Not in a sisterly way. In a blushing, heart-thumping, I wrote you a love letter kind of way. Chung nearly choked on her own breath. She sat up in bed, staring at nothing, processing. The eldest daughter of the prestigious Gu family, the one who never smiled without reason, the one who commanded rooms just by walking into them, had a secret crush on the boy they all grew up beside. And not just any feelings, the kind that had been brewing since high school, the kind that put pen to paper and wrote entire love letters with poetic imagery and trembling handwriting. Mom's head snapped up from across the house, her eyes narrowed. She'd heard it too, and then, because the universe has no mercy, someone said it out loud. Big sister likes Gu Hua, like romantically likes him. She even wrote him a love letter in high school and never sent it. It's still hidden in her drawer. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a spoon. Gu Wanqing shot to her feet. Her eyes swept the room like a searchlight. Her voice dropped to a dangerous, barely contained whisper. Who said that? Nobody moved. Second sister Gu Qinghan was already pressing her lips together, pretending to study the ceiling. Third sister Gu Qingshui had buried her face so deep into her own sleeve she was basically disappearing. Mom had gone completely still, her expression blank but her eyes absolutely sparkling. Gu Hua, the boy himself, couldn't hear a single word, but somehow the weight of everyone's sudden silence made his heart jump anyway. And then the voice came again, cheerful and completely shameless. It's fine, she only wrote a letter, she never kissed him or anything. They can just grow up and get married. Problem solved. Gu Wanqing's eye twitched. Gu Qinghan had heard enough. She inhaled slowly, looked at the eldest sister, and said nothing. But her silence said everything. Second sister had long since trained herself to catch these stray thoughts before they became problems. Today the thoughts were coming fast, and they were coming hot. Don't panic, the voice added cheerfully. It's not like she kissed him, just wrote some words. Words never hurt anyone. Gu Wanqing pressed both hands flat on the table. That voice had better show themselves right now or so help me. Gu Qinghan tilted her head. Big sister, breathe. I am breathing. Breathe quieter. A small laugh drifted in from somewhere, unattached to anyone visible. Light, almost gleeful, like someone watching a very good show from a very comfortable distance. Mom's eyes landed on the hallway. Her expression shifted into something calculating. The love letter was still in Wanqing's drawer. She'd find it before the week was out. Mark her words. Gu Qingshui was already biting down on her own sleeve to keep from laughing. Big sister, composed, brilliant, frankly terrifying big sister, had written a love letter so poetic it described Gu Hua as a flame in winter that warmed the entire chamber of my heart. Someone had just recited it aloud, in full, with feeling. Gu Wanqing's face had turned the specific shade of red that existed somewhere between a fresh tomato and the surface of the sun. She was going to find whoever was responsible, and she was going to have words, many words, loud words. I want to see your computer, Gu Qingshui said to her, voice completely innocent, eyes not innocent at all. Fine, Wanqing snapped. And from somewhere across the house, a single quiet voice murmured, the third sister's turn is coming next. Gu Qingshui went very still. And you, the one who had been lying in bed this whole time, listening to every unfiltered, embarrassing, absolutely delicious private thought in that house, you smiled into your pillow and thought, this family is incredible. Your name was Gu Cheng. You had officially been home for 1 day, and you were already convinced this was going to be the most entertaining chapter of your entire life. It started with Big Sister's love letter, but it certainly didn't end there, because the thoughts kept coming, one after the other, each one more unhinged than the last. Third sister Gu Qingshui, The baby-faced, dimple-having, everyone thinks she's an angel third sister, had apparently committed several serious crimes against the family's priceless antique collection. A porcelain piece that Dad had spent 3 months and an absurd amount of money tracking down, shattered, replaced with a fake so convincing that nobody had noticed for years. Mom's prized artifact, destroyed and patched up with modeling clay and a prayer. Big sister's coin collection, the one she had been building since she was 12, currently worth tens of millions on the open market, had apparently been smuggled out and traded away for a single weapon-shaped figurine, a toy. She had traded tens of millions of rare coins for a toy that some neighborhood boy had convinced her was precious. You pressed your face back into your pillow. This family was going to be the death of you, not from heartbreak or conflict or dramatic confrontation, just from the sheer, overwhelming effort of trying not to burst out laughing in every room you walked into. Gu Qing sat with perfect posture at the dining table, looking serene and untouchable, completely unaware that you were listening to her inner monologue of panic. She kept sneaking glances at you, kept thinking, does he know? Can he hear me? Why does he keep almost smiling? She didn't know, she couldn't know, but you knew everything. About the porcelain, about the clay replacement, about the coins, about every terrible, hilarious, slightly criminal thing the three sisters had been hiding from your parents for years. And you hadn't said a word. You sat there in the middle of that chaos like a peaceful observer at the world's most entertaining disaster, eating your meal, occasionally nodding when someone spoke to you, and cataloging every single secret like a librarian of family gossip. Then, second sister Gu Qinghan's thoughts drifted into range, and those were a different kind of complicated. She had feelings. Genuine, complicated, messy feelings. For a man who had apparently been pulling strings in her workplace, a man who had been getting close to her for reasons that were not entirely honest. The thought came to her slowly, like something she'd been trying not to think too loudly, even in her own head. He likes me. He actually likes me. Or does he? How can I trust it? Mom caught that one. Her head tilted. Something about the way she suddenly straightened in her chair said she filed it away under urgent matters requiring personal attention. You sat there eating. The thoughts kept flooding in, messy, funny, human, all of them real in a way that polished surfaces never were. Dad came home early, announced himself at the door, called out cheerfully, asked where everyone was. The living room assembled itself with practiced speed. Everyone sat up straighter, expressions rearranged. The chaos tucked itself away. He looked around the room, smiled, said it was rare to see the whole family together, and then he asked about you. Where's Ah Chen? Still sleeping, they said. He laughed softly. Let her rest. She must be tired. You were, in fact, deeply awake on the other side of that wall. You just hadn't decided to make your entrance yet, because the best observers always wait, and right now, you had a room full of people with unguarded thoughts and nowhere to hide. Mom pulled Dad away toward the sitting room before anyone could say anything stupid. The sisters exchanged a single look. Third sister grabbed Big Sister's arm and said very quietly, I'll get your coins back. Big Sister stared at the wall. Second sister said nothing, which was its own kind of answer, and you lay there, listening to all three of them spiral in their own private orbits, thinking the same thought they didn't yet know how to say out loud. This family had a lot of catching up to do, including with you. You finally got out of bed at 8 in the evening, starving, satisfied, rested in a way the original Gu Cheng had probably never been in her entire stressed, unloved, quietly suffocating life before you arrived to inhabit it. You washed your face, tidied yourself up, and opened the door. Mom appeared at the end of the hallway approximately half a second later, like she'd been stationed there all along. Her face broke into a warm, practiced smile. Ah, Chen, you're up. Come down, I had the kitchen heat everything up for you. Your sisters are all in the living room. You looked down the stairs and saw them. 3 faces, 3 very different expressions. Big sister, still faintly pink around the ears, jaw set like she was ready to do battle with anyone who brought up love letters. Second sister, calm, composed, watching you with the quiet assessment of someone who'd already decided you were interesting but hadn't yet decided what to do about that. Third sister, doing her absolute best impression of a person who had never broken anything, ever, in her entire pure and blameless life. Your heart did something unexpected, a small, soft thing, something like warmth. These girls were disasters, spectacular, chaotic, occasionally criminal disasters. And they were your sisters. You thought quietly to no one in particular, this is going to be fine. Better than fine. You went downstairs. Second sister was the first to hold your gaze long enough to say, with careful neutrality, did you rest well? Very, you said. Third sister smiled, a little too wide. We were all worried. You slept for so long. Big sister said nothing, just nodded. Her thoughts, however, were considerably louder. She was thinking that you looked like Mom around the eyes, and that this was somehow both comforting and aggravating, and that she hadn't decided yet if she liked you, and that she probably would eventually, and that she hated admitting things like that even to herself. You sat down at the table. Mom bustled in with heated food and commentary. Dad appeared from the sitting room, looked at the assembled family, and smiled the quiet smile of a man who had everything he wanted in one room. It should have been a peaceful dinner. It was not. Because Gu Hua, cheerful, oblivious, golden boy Gu Hua, was somewhere across the house organizing his enormous pile of gift collections, completely unaware that the eldest daughter of the Gu family had been quietly in love with him since high school, and also completely unaware that at least 3 people at the dinner table now knew about it, and one of them was you. You picked up your chopsticks. Beside you, third sister was still smiling her completely innocent smile. Big sister was staring at her rice like it had personally offended her. Second sister had gone very quiet, and you thought, the second sister's secret is the most complicated one. The third sister is just chaos in a human costume. The first sister is stubborn but honest. But the second one, she's carrying something heavier. Something about a man. Something about trust. You'd give it time. These things always surfaced on their own. Across the table, Mom looked at the 3 sisters and then looked at you and thought very clearly, I wonder if Ah Chen knows something we don't. You kept your expression perfectly, beautifully blank, and thought, you have absolutely no idea. The dinner ended without incident, which in the Gu household was apparently its own kind of miracle. Because approximately 15 minutes after the dishes were cleared, the living room turned into a crime scene. It started with Big Sister's eyes. She'd gone upstairs after dinner on some quiet errand, came back down with a different expression than she'd left with. Tighter, more controlled, the kind of control that meant the thing underneath was not controlled at all. She looked at third sister. Third sister looked at her meal. You opened my safe, Big Sister said. It wasn't a question. Third sister's chopsticks made a soft sound against the bowl. I don't know your passcode. The passcode I've changed 3 times because you kept breaking in. That's a coincidence. You cracked every single one. I'm very good at math. You sat back in your chair and watched this unfold with the quiet contentment of someone who had spent the last hour knowing exactly how this was going to go. Big Sister placed something on the table. Flat, rectangular, old, the kind of object that meant something to someone. Third sister looked at it, looked away. That coin, Big Sister said, is fake. The temperature in the room dropped approximately 4 degrees. Where, Big Sister continued, voice absolutely level, is the real one? Third sister's hands had gone very still. In her head, the thoughts were moving at the speed of pure panic. He knows. She knows. How does she know? The safe. The fake. The swap. The boy down the street who'd taken one look at the coin and said it was worth something serious, and she'd believed him, and he'd swapped it for that ridiculous figurine before she'd fully understood what was happening, and she'd been too embarrassed to admit it for 2 years. Qing Shui, Big Sister said. Third sister said nothing. Look at me. Third sister looked up. Big Sister's expression was perfectly still, which was far more terrifying than anger. Anger she could handle. This was something else. The coin I've been collecting since I was 12, the one currently worth enough to buy an apartment. You gave it to a boy from the neighborhood, for a toy. Third sister opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know it was a toy, Big Sister repeated. Third sister's shoulders caved. He said it was a rare antique. It was a figurine, made of plastic. In my defense, do not. You hid your smile behind your teacup. Mom appeared in the doorway at precisely the wrong moment, or the right moment depending on perspective. Her gaze swept the room and landed on third sister with the accuracy of someone who had been doing this for decades. What did you do? It wasn't a question either. This family asked very few actual questions. They mostly made statements and waited for someone to collapse under the pressure. Third sister collapsed. I broke the porcelain piece Dad bought, but it was an accident and I replaced it really well and nobody noticed for 2 whole years. The room went completely silent. Dad's voice drifted in from the study, perfectly calm. I noticed. Third sister's eyes went wide. What? First week. A pause. A sigh. Heavy with the specific exhaustion of a man who had chosen consciously to let something go for the sake of peace and family harmony. I recognized the texture. The weight was wrong, but you'd clearly tried very hard. Another pause. I wasn't going to ruin it for you. Third sister made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a groan. Mom's expression softened for exactly 1 second before snapping back to justice. And my artifact? Third sister made the same sound again. And my coins? Big sister said. Third sister looked between them both, did the math, decided to negotiate. What if I just gave you money? How much money? However much you want. The coin alone is worth tens of millions. However much I have. Big sister looked at the ceiling. When? I'll get a loan. From whom? Someone. No one will loan you tens of millions. I have savings? You spent all your savings on skincare and limited edition collectibles. Third sister had no response to this because it was completely accurate. She opened her mouth anyway. I could. You'll pay it back, Big sister said. Every cent. And I want the porcelain piece properly restored by a professional. Not clay. How did you know about the clay? You left the packaging in the recycling bin. Third sister pressed her face into her hands. Mom took a very long, slow breath. Dad retreated back into his study. Big sister sat down with the specific posture of someone who had won and was allowing themselves exactly zero satisfaction from it. And you sat at the edge of all of it, quietly radiant with information, thinking that this was all deeply funny, and also in some strange way, proof that this was a real family, messy and imperfect and a little criminal, but real. You hadn't had that before. Not really. The original Gu Cheng had grown up in a household where nobody shouted because nobody cared enough, where there were no love letters and no stolen coins, and no dad quietly noticing broken porcelain and saying nothing because his daughter looked guilty enough already. This was different. You went to sleep that night with the sound of third sister's horrified negotiating still echoing faintly through the walls. You smiled. The next morning came with chaos already baked in. You woke at 8 in the morning, lay in bed for approximately 3 minutes, heard enough ambient thoughts to know that Gu Hua was downstairs attempting to organize something. Third sister was already stress-eating, and second sister had sent a message to her assistant that you were too far away to fully catch. You got up, got dressed, went to look for something interesting to do. What you found was Gu Hua in the kitchen, surrounded by an impractical number of gift boxes, wearing an expression of pure and uncomplicated happiness. He'd been collecting these gifts from the sisters for days. Trinkets, luxury items, things people sent when they wanted to say we care without sitting down to say it properly. He was unwrapping each one with the focused delight of someone who had never learned to be cynical. You watched him from the doorway. He didn't notice you. His thoughts were warm and round and uncomplicated. He was thinking about the press conference today. He had one scheduled, his first proper public appearance in the new role. He was thinking about how the sisters would watch it on their phones and feel proud. He was thinking about what he'd wear. You watched him for another moment. His thoughts were so clean, so unguarded. He wasn't performing anything right now. He was just himself. Happy and a little vain and genuinely sweet in a way that didn't ask anything from anyone. Big sister had written him a love letter. You couldn't blame her. You went back upstairs before he saw you. Across the city, in a building full of humming computer screens and lowered blinds and people who believed very strongly in their own importance, a man named Zhou Rui was sitting behind a desk thinking about you, not warmly. Zhou Rui was your manager, technically, in the loosest sense of the word. He had been assigned to you, before the real you, the you from somewhere else, arrived in Gu Cheng's body and inherited her life. He had done almost nothing of value in this professional relationship. He had, however, formed very strong opinions about your worth, your potential, your place in the industry, and the degree to which you should be grateful for his generous management. Those opinions were wrong. comprehensively, impressively wrong. But he didn't know that yet. What he knew was that you'd been ignoring his calls. What he didn't know was that you could hear his thoughts from across town whenever you happened to be in range, and that they were uniformly uncharitable toward everyone except himself, and that you found the entire thing faintly hilarious. He would learn. They usually did. The press conference was supposed to be a simple thing. A standard public appearance, questions from journalists, a few photographs, a brief statement. Gu Hua's people had been coordinating for days. The sisters were supposed to attend. Zhou Rui had prepared remarks. Nothing about that day was simple. It started the moment you stepped outside. There were people waiting, not a small number of people, a lot of people, positioned with the specific patience of individuals who had planned this carefully and were determined to follow through. Your fan base, if the word fans could be applied to people who had spent the last several months writing extremely creative insults about you on social media, had apparently decided to show up in person. Not to cause trouble. Not exactly. They just wanted to see you, in person, with their own eyes. Mom grabbed your sleeve. Those people, do they know you? You process this. I think they might be my fans. Mom looked at them, looked at you. Why are they just standing there like that? I think they're waiting for something. What are they waiting for? I think, you said with careful neutrality, they want me to acknowledge them. Mom blinked. Then do that. The thing is, you said, watching the group of approximately 30 people standing in absolute total silence while staring at you with unnerving intensity, I don't know if acknowledging them is going to help or make it worse. Mom looked at them again. The group had not moved, had not spoken, had not blinked at an entirely normal rate. They look like they're trying very hard, she said. I know. It's a little frightening. I know. In the minds of the assembled crowd, the thoughts were a cheerful chaos. Please don't look at us. Please don't look at us. Wait. He looked. He looked. But he's not running. Why isn't he running? Is he going to say something? Should we say something first? The rules said, stay quiet. The plan said, stay quiet. But he's right there. You gave them a small, polite nod. The group visibly shuddered with suppressed emotion. You took Mom's arm and walked in the other direction. Behind you, the crowd erupted into a whispered, frantic, thoroughly contained celebration. You thought, these are the strangest people I've ever encountered. I want to protect them. You got to the press conference venue 20 minutes later, found your position, let the handlers and organizers position you where they wanted, scanned the room, and then something happened that no one had planned for. Someone was selling things, in the venue, fake luxury goods. Very specific fake luxury goods, the kind that involved sound recordings and sealed packaging and price tags that did not match the actual contents. And the person running this side operation was the wife of a man in attendance, and she didn't know that you could hear exactly what she was selling, exactly who she'd sold it to, and exactly how confident she felt that nobody would find out. You did not say this loudly, you said it quietly, conversationally, just loud enough for your own voice to be heard by the people immediately around you. And then you said it again. The woman's face went the color of old chalk. She excused herself, made a phone call. You heard every word of it. Then she came back. And approximately 3 minutes later you mentioned, again, conversationally to no one in particular, that the operation hadn't actually stopped, it had just moved to a different format. She made another phone call, this time with considerably more urgency. By the time the press conference actually started, the woman had transferred a substantial amount of money to her husband remotely, canceled 3 pending orders, and aged approximately 4 years. You took your seat at the table and accepted a glass of water. Xiao Lanqing, big sister, appeared on the other side of the venue, scanning the room with the focused attention of someone who had arrived early to assess everything. She spotted you. Her expression went through several evolutions in rapid succession. You gave her a small wave. She looked away immediately. You thought, she's going to pretend that never happened. Her thoughts confirmed it. The press conference proceeded. Questions were asked. Answers were given. A photographer caught you at an angle that should not have been as flattering as it turned out to be, given your outfit, which had been assembled with personal preference and no regard whatsoever for standard entertainment industry aesthetics. The jacket was not standard. The trousers were not standard. The hat was pulled low in a way that suggested you were either very private or preparing for light combat. One journalist looking at you wrote in their notes, Is this person a celebrity, or is this person about to start something? You were neither. You were just comfortable. After the questions, there was a pause for photographs. Then a murmur went through the room. Then the police arrived, not because of anything you'd done. Not directly. The woman's operation had been flagged by someone further up the chain, and the venue had been contacted, and the officers were simply there to gather information and speak with certain individuals. They spoke with you too. Very politely, with considerable admiration. One officer said in a tone of professional appreciation, "You managed to extract a full confession without anyone realizing it was happening. Efficient work." You said, "I just said what I knew." You said it at exactly the right time and volume. "I have good timing." The officer smiled. "We're going to recommend your cooperation be noted positively." You accepted this. Outside, your fan base, who had followed the press conference on 17 different live streams simultaneously, were experiencing a collective emotional crisis. In the best possible way, the threads were already flying. He did what? He exposed someone at his own press conference, without raising his voice, without being asked, just said it, like it was nothing, like he does this every day. Someone posted a clip. The clip spread. By evening it had been viewed enough times to qualify as a major event. Your follower count, which had previously been composed almost entirely of accounts that existed to criticize you, gained a very different kind of number. You didn't check your phone until you got home. Mom was waiting in the living room watching something on her tablet, and the moment you walked in, she looked up with the energy of a woman who had been saving this face for the exact right moment. "The neighbors sent me a video. Is that you?" "Yes. It says you caught a criminal." "I didn't catch anyone. I just mentioned what I knew." You mentioned it in front of cameras and police. The timing worked out. Mom looked at you for a very long moment. Then she opened her arms. You walked into them without thinking. She held on for a moment, patted your back once, then let go and immediately said, "You're not wearing enough layers." "I'm fine." "You look like you went to a press conference dressed for a construction site." "I look fine. I've seen construction workers with more polish." "Thank you for your honesty." She pushed a plate of food toward you that had clearly been kept warm on the stove for the last hour. "Eat. Your sisters called. They saw the clip." You sat down, picked up your chopsticks. "And?" Big Sister said, and I quote, "Tell Ah Chen that was technically effective even if the execution was unorthodox." You translated this automatically. "That was actually impressive, and I'm not going to say so directly." Second Sister said you handled it well. "And Third Sister?" Mom's expression did something complicated. Third Sister said she's going to practice saying things like that. "Please tell her not to." "I already did." You ate your dinner. It was warm and carefully prepared and tasted like someone who loved you had been standing over a stove thinking about whether you'd eaten enough. You hadn't expected this, any of it. The family, the warmth, the chaos. The way these people had somehow, without planning to, decided to love you, even when they didn't entirely know who you were. You set down your chopsticks, thought about the original girl, the one whose life this was, the one who had been returned to this family after 18 years and had not known what to do with any of it, who had been given everything and understood none of it because she'd spent so long not having it. You were going to do better by this family than anyone expected, not because you had to, because this was yours now, and you kept what was yours. The next few days settled into a rhythm that was equal parts domestic chaos and deeply entertaining surveillance operation. You discovered that the house had a specific ecosystem of secrets that everyone maintained simultaneously. Dad's private thoughts about his old business partners, stored with the careful organization of a man who had spent decades learning when to speak and when to stay quiet. Mom's mental calendar, which was 7 layers deep and included things like check on Big Sister's feelings, Rigu Hua, and find that love letter before it causes problems, and figure out what Ah Chen is always listening to that makes her smile like that. Big Sister's ongoing internal war between her professional composure and her personal chaos. Second Sister's careful management of a situation involving a man she'd trusted and was now reassessing. Third Sister's daily negotiation with her own conscience over the coins. You moved through all of it like water through a landscape, present, observing, occasionally helpful in ways that people couldn't quite trace back to you. You mentioned to Mom, casually, that maybe second sister seemed tired lately and might appreciate some time off. Mom called second sister that afternoon. You mentioned to Dad, even more casually, that the neighbor down the street had been struggling with something at work. Dad made a call. The neighbor's situation improved. You said nothing specific, did nothing dramatic, just occasionally placed the right observation in the right ear at the right time. Third sister noticed first. She cornered you in the upstairs hallway one afternoon with the expression of someone who had been trying to figure out a puzzle for several days. You always know things, she said, not accusatory, just curious. I pay attention, you said. No one pays attention like that. Mom knows everything and she doesn't know half what you do. You considered how to answer this. I'm observant, you said. Third sister looked at you for a long time. Her thoughts were moving quickly. She was almost there, almost touching the edge of it. And then, she backed away from the thought, the way people do when the answer is something they're not ready for yet. You're weird, she said, not unkindly, with something that was almost fondness. I know, you said. She walked past you down the hall, paused, turned back. The coins, I'm going to get them back. I found the guy. I'm negotiating. Good. Big sister is still angry. She'll get over it. You think? She wrote a love letter to someone she's known for 15 years. She's not someone who gives up easily. Third sister blinked, opened her mouth, closed it. How do you know about the... You mentioned it. I definitely didn't mention it. Someone mentioned it, you said pleasantly. Third sister stared at you. You smiled. She went downstairs muttering something under her breath that she absolutely meant for you to hear. This person is not normal. You thought correct. The press conference aftermath continued to ripple. The clip spread further. Comment sections across 3 different platforms erupted into debates about whether you'd done something clever or something reckless or something that was technically both. An entertainment journalist wrote a piece. It was mostly correct. You read it in the kitchen while eating a bowl of fruit and thought, close enough. Your fan base, the complicated, contradictory, somehow dedicated anyway fan base, was in a sustained state of emotional upheaval. The ratio of supportive to critical had shifted, slowly but unmistakably. New accounts appeared that were simply there to watch, to catalog, to wonder what was going to happen next. You thought about giving them something to work with, nothing calculated, just a moment of realness, something true. You opened your social media, posted a single photo, not of yourself, of the kitchen window, the early morning light coming through, a half-eaten apple on the counter, no caption. Within the hour you had more engagement than anything the account had posted in 2 years. Most of it just variations of, what does this mean? Is this a concept photo? Is this her aesthetic era? Is she okay? Is she telling us something? What does the apple mean? You thought, the apple means I was hungry. But you let them wonder. It was more interesting that way. Second sister came to find you that evening. She knocked first. Which big sister never did. Which third sister forgot to do about half the time. Gu Qinghan knocked and waited for an answer, and when you said come in, she opened the door with the careful consideration of someone who respected boundaries they had not been specifically asked to respect. She sat down on the chair across from your desk, put her hands in her lap, looked at you with the expression of someone who was deciding how much to say. You waited. The man I've been seeing, she said finally. I think you know something about him. You said carefully, what makes you think that? You looked at me a specific way at dinner, 2 nights ago, when his name came up. You had, in fact, looked at her a specific way, because her thoughts had been very loud in that moment. The specific loudness of someone who is afraid the thing they suspect might be true. I don't know him personally, you said, but you considered her. She was watching you with second sister eyes, measuring, steady, capable of holding a difficult truth. She wasn't asking to be reassured. She was asking for honesty. People who approach situations from a position of strategy, you said, tend to have patterns. The patterns usually show up in their history, before they get careful. Gu Qinghan was quiet for a moment. You think he has patterns? I think it would be worth looking. She nodded. Once. Slow. The nod of someone who had already suspected but needed one more voice to give them permission to trust their own instincts. How do you know these things? She said, not angrily, just wanting an answer. I pay attention, you said again. She looked at you the same way third sister had, weighing it, deciding whether to push. She didn't push. She stood up, moved to leave. At the door, she paused. Are you happy here, in this house? The question surprised you. Not its content, but the fact that she asked it, that she thought to ask. Yes, you said, meaning it. Second sister's expression softened by exactly 1 degree, which was, from her, enormous. Good, she said, and left. You sat with that for a moment. The quiet of the room, the sound of the house breathing around you, Dad in his study, Mom on her phone downstairs, third sister crashing around in her bedroom with the specific energy of someone trying to solve a problem, big sister's careful footsteps down the hall. You thought, I didn't know it could be like this. And then, immediately after, I'm going to protect every single one of them. Even third sister, who had traded coins for a toy. Especially third sister, actually. The following week arrived with the kind of momentum that suggested things were about to accelerate considerably. Gu Hua's press conference footage, which had been circling the entertainment sphere for days, finally connected with a production that had been in the planning stages for months. It was a drama, a big one, period setting, large cast, the kind of production that generated awards consideration before the first scene was shot. They wanted you, not for a large role. The role being offered was a supporting one, specifically, a servant character, background presence, a handful of scenes, easy money, and minimal pressure. Zhou Rui called you to announce this with the energy of someone delivering transformative news. You said, that sounds fine. He said, fine? This is a major production. I said it sounds fine. Send me the audition details. He sputtered. You hung up. The audition venue was clean and efficient and populated by exactly the kind of people you expected. Beautiful, hungry, working hard to look like they were working effortlessly. The production team sat at a long table. The director was the specific kind of focused that meant he had no time for anything except what mattered. He looked at you when you walked in, considered your outfit, considered your expression, said neutrally, You're auditioning for the servant role. Yes. We were also going to offer you a secondary male lead. I'd prefer the servant. The room did a small recalibration. People exchanged glances. The casting director made a note. The director's expression didn't change, but his thoughts moved fast. Curious. Assessing. Why? He said. The servant character, you said, has better scenes. The secondary lead spends most of the drama reacting to other people's decisions. The servant gets to be in the room when everything important happens. I'd rather be in the room. A pause. The director said, Can you show us something? You thought about it. Looked at the production designer seated at the far end of the table. A kind face, patient posture, didn't seem to mind being used as a prop. You walked over, picked up a glass of water from the table, handed it to the designer. Your expression shifted. In that single beat of transition, between you taking the glass and extending it, something changed. Not dramatically, not with a grand sweep of gesture, just quietly. Your spine adjusted, your eyes dropped at the right angle, your breath changed rhythm. The person who handed the glass was not Gu Cheng. She was someone who had spent 20 years learning to make herself smaller in the presence of people who did not notice her, who had learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken, who carried the specific invisible dignity of someone doing a job with complete personal integrity while being almost entirely unseen. You held that for 4 seconds. Then you stepped back, put the glass down, and looked at the director. He was quiet for a long moment. You changed your center of gravity, the casting director said quietly. The character is always watching, you said. She's never the focus, but she sees everything. The director made a mark on his sheet, said nothing. You were contacted 3 days later. You'd gotten the role. Not just the servant role, both. The director had decided, after considerable internal debate that his production team was apparently very vocal about, that he wanted you for the secondary lead as well. Not replacing the servant. Both. The servant and the secondary lead were characters whose paths crossed at a specific moment in the story. He wanted to see what you'd do with it. You told Zhou Rui. Zhou Rui said, I can't believe this. You said, tell the production team I'm available for prep work starting Monday. Zhou Rui said, do you understand what you've just been offered? Yes, I understand. Monday. He was still talking when you put the phone in your pocket. Back at the house, the news spread the way good news does in a family. Not through announcement, but through atmosphere. Mom knew first, because moms always know first. She appeared at your bedroom door with a specific kind of smile and said nothing except, "Good girl," and then went back downstairs. Big sister found out from mom. Her thoughts, when she processed it, went through several stages. Surprise, reassessment, something that might cautiously be called respect. She didn't say any of this. She sent you a text message that said, "Both roles is unusual. The production team must have seen something real." You thought, they did. Third sister burst into your room without knocking, as was her custom, and launched herself at you with the enthusiasm of someone who has been waiting for an opportunity to celebrate. Both roles? My sibling is doing both roles in a period drama? Is this a drama about a servant who secretly has a double life? Is that why? It's a drama about court politics, you said. And you play two people in it? Not two people, two roles, different characters. That's incredible. That's actually incredible. When does it start filming? Can I visit the set? Can I bring food? I can make things. I make very good things when I try. You thought about the coins. You don't need to bring food. I want to bring food. Okay. She hugged you again, left, came back. Big sister said your audition was impressive. Big sister didn't see the audition. No, but the casting director apparently knows someone who knows someone, and the word that got back was impressive. Big sister said this to mom. Mom told me, I'm telling you. You let this process. The gossip network of the Gu household was an entire infrastructure. Tell big sister I said thank you, you said. Third sister grinned. Left for real this time. You sat in the quiet of your room. Second sister was downstairs doing something careful and methodical with the information she'd decided to look for. Somewhere across the city, the man she'd trusted was about to discover that the pattern third sister had looked for does not disappear just because you stop looking. Gu Hua was probably online reading about the drama casting, wondering if he'd have scenes near you, and being privately delighted at the idea. Big sister was in her room with her organized bookshelves and her careful handwriting, and her one irrevocable feeling she kept very tidily contained in a drawer that no longer had a coin collection in it. Dad was in his study, managing something. Mom was in the kitchen, managing everything. And you had a production starting Monday. Two roles, a family that was slowly, imperfectly, sincerely letting you in. You opened your phone, looked at your social media. The Apple photo had passed 1 million views. You posted another photo, just the view from your window. Trees, sky, the specific gray-blue of late afternoon. No caption. Within minutes, your fan base erupted. She's entering her atmospheric era. The Apple, and now this. She's building a universe. I don't know what's happening, but I trust it. You smiled. You were going to be okay. More than okay. You had work to do. The mountain set was 4 hours away by car, carved into the side of an elevation that had clearly never heard of compromise. Steep where it felt like being steep, beautiful where it didn't need to be, and cold in the mornings in a way that clarified your thoughts whether you wanted them clarified or not. The production had taken over 2 large villas on the upper slope. Beautiful buildings, old-style architecture, maintained with care, surrounded by trees that had been there long enough to develop opinions about the people passing through. You arrived with Gu Hua. This had not been your plan. Gu Hua had appeared at the door of the car with his enormous suitcase and his high-heeled boots, and his expression of a man who sincerely expected someone to carry his luggage. And you had gotten in the car and looked out the window and declined to be that person. The drive was 4 hours. Gu Hua talked for most of it. To the driver mostly, cheerfully personal questions, family, work, weekend plans. The driver answered each one with the careful brevity of a man who was trying to figure out if this was genuine curiosity or performance. It was genuine. That was the thing about Gu Hua. He was genuinely curious about people in a way that was slightly exhausting and entirely authentic. His thoughts, though, his thoughts were a different story. You weren't eavesdropping exactly, you were just present, and the thoughts came whether you sought them or not. The driver's thoughts arrived in stages, each one slightly darker than the last. Not toward Gu Hua, toward his wife, his daughter. Patterns of behavior that had been going on for years. A man who was charming in public and something else entirely at home. The daughter, who had stopped making sound when she was young because making sound attracted attention she didn't want. You sat very still in the back seat. Guhua kept talking. You thought about intervention, about the limits of what you could know and what you could say, about the difference between information and action, about what help actually looked like. You didn't say anything during the drive, but when you stopped at the mountain base to wait for the road to clear and the driver got out to stretch his legs, you followed him, stood beside him in the cold air, said, not looking at him, "You know, the thing about carrying something difficult at home, eventually it gets heavy enough to notice." The driver looked at you. You kept looking at the mountain. People who love their families usually find a way to get help before it becomes something they can't come back from. A very long silence. "Help," the driver said flatly. "That costs money. There are places that don't charge, or charge very little. I can send you information if you want." Another silence. "Why would you?" he started. "I don't need a reason," you said. "Just a yes or no." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay." You nodded. Got back in the car. Guhua, who had been studying the mountain view and thinking about which angle would make the best photograph, had no idea any of this had happened. He got back in the car and resumed talking about the catering on the set and whether the production team would have decent rice. You sent the information to the driver's phone number before the car reached the top of the mountain. The villas were exactly as described, beautiful, private, and populated by people who were already in the middle of several carefully maintained dynamics that you were about to walk directly into. You knew some of it already. The system that had taken up residence somewhere in the back of your awareness. The one that had been processing and sorting and occasionally sliding useful information across your consciousness like a very opinionated research assistant, had already told you pieces. Ko Jung was here. The man Gu Qinghan had been involved with. The man with patterns that showed up in his history before he got careful. He was here as part of the supporting cast, which meant Gu Qinghan was going to visit, and Ko Jung was going to be in proximity, and whatever was building between those two was going to happen right in front of you. And Gu Huai, the man who had arrived before everyone else, who moved through rooms like someone who'd decided the easiest path was to make everyone like him before they noticed what they'd agreed to, was already in conversation with Ko Jung on the other side of the property. You observed this from a distance. Ko Jung didn't know yet. He was warm, earnest, the kind of person who, when he liked someone, showed it plainly on his face in a way he probably thought made him easy to read, but which actually made him easy to mislead. He was thinking about Gu Qinghan, about whether she'd come to visit, about whether, if she did, she'd think better of him for how hard he was working. Gu Huai was talking, making it easy, making it comfortable, setting something up with the specific patience of someone who never lets you see how long they've been planning. You watched, you didn't intervene. Not yet. These things had to be allowed to develop, or they didn't develop properly. And something that hadn't developed properly couldn't be properly resolved. The production settled into its first full meeting, everyone in one room. Director at the front. Cast arranged in the careful social geometry of people who know hierarchy matters even when nobody's saying it out loud. You sat in the back. Gu Huai sat near the center. He'd arrived first, secured the right seat, smiled at the right people, and was now positioned as someone who belonged at the center of things. He glanced at you. Something moved through his expression. Assessment. Recognition. A quick recalculation. He thought, she's going to be a problem. You thought, you have no idea. Ko Jung was sitting beside Gu Huai. He'd been maneuvered there, probably, though it would have felt like a natural choice. Ko Jung's thoughts were simpler. He was hoping the shoot went well, hoping to prove himself, hoping, somewhere underneath all the professional hopes, that the right person would look at him and see something worth looking at. The director introduced the project, went through the key beats. The period drama was set during a transitional era, old power structures collapsing, new ones forming, people on every level of society scrambling to understand which way the current was running. You thought, I know this feeling. The director looked at you at one point, said, the servant character exists in both timelines of the story. She is the constant. The audience should understand by the end that she has been the most important person in every room, even when no one saw her. You said, I understand the character. Someone to your left was thinking, this is the person who plays servants? She doesn't look like she's ever served anyone anything. You thought, correct. That's the point. The meeting broke, people dispersed. You went to find your room, which was on the second floor of the secondary villa, and which had a window that looked out over the valley with the specific quality of light that arrived in late afternoon on mountain slopes and made everything look like a painting that someone was currently finishing. You stood at the window for a moment. Your phone buzzed. Gu Qinghan. I found something, the message said. No other context. You replied, what did you find? History. Like you said. A pause. Then, he did this before. Different woman, different situation, same structure. You read this twice. Are you okay? You sent. The reply took longer this time. I don't know yet. I'm deciding. You thought about second sister. Her stillness, her precision, the way she'd asked whether you were happy here, the way she'd knocked before coming in and waited for an answer. Whatever you decide, you typed, I'll support it. Another pause. Then, you're strange for someone so young. You smiled at your phone. I've been told. Big sister said something similar. She said you see things differently. Big sister said that? She said, Chen sees things that take other people years to notice. I don't know if that's a gift or a burden, but it's clearly both. You put your phone down. Looked at the valley through the window. Big sister had written a love letter she never sent. Second sister was sitting with new information about someone she'd trusted. Third sister was negotiating with a neighborhood boy for coins worth tens of millions. Dad had a study full of carefully organized secrets. Mom watched everything and managed everything and loved everything with a thoroughness that left no one out. And you were standing at a window in a mountain villa, about to step into a production that would put you in the center of something, while carrying the private thoughts of everyone around you like a library you hadn't asked to build. Outside, the light shifted. Below the window, on the path between the two villas, Ko Jung was walking alone. His shoulders were tight. His thoughts were moving fast. Something Gu Huai had said, something small, something that might be nothing, had snagged on a corner of his mind and wouldn't let go. He stopped walking, looked up, saw you at the window. Your eyes met for a second, long enough to register. Then you stepped back. Not dramatically, just stepped back. Ko Jung stood there for another moment. His thoughts, when they reached you. She knows something. She looked at me like she knows something. Is it about Gu Qinghan? Does she know about Gu Qinghan? What does she know? You sat down on the edge of your bed. The production started tomorrow. The drama would begin. The people around you would play their parts. Some of them knowing, some of them not. Some of them with much better intentions than circumstances were going to allow. You would be the constant. The one in the room when everything important happened. The one who saw. You lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Thought about the driver. Hoped the information helped. Thought about second sister's careful neutrality and what it was covering. Thought about Ko Jung's snagged thought and how long before it caught on something that couldn't be ignored. Thought about Gu Huai. He was planning something, had been planning something for a while, the kind of plan that needed other people to be comfortable before it could be executed. He was good at making people comfortable, good at being the version of himself that made other people feel seen. He was going to make Ko Jung feel seen. And Ko Jung, who wanted very badly to be seen by a specific person, was going to be easy to move in that direction. Unless you closed your eyes. The mountain wind moved through the window crack. Tomorrow the cameras would roll, and somewhere in the house, Gu Huai was finishing a conversation that would begin a chain of events he had planned very carefully. What he hadn't planned for, what nobody ever planned for, was you. You smiled at the ceiling. Let him plan. You'd be in the room. You were always in the room. And the next morning, before the first scene was called and the crew was still moving equipment up the slope, and Ko Jung was rehearsing lines alone in the courtyard, and Gu Huai was somewhere being charming to someone who deserved better, you caught a thought that didn't belong to anyone immediately around you. It arrived faint, directional, like something transmitted from further away. It was Gu Huai's thought, and it was about Gu Qinghan, not about Ko Jung, not about the production, about second sister specifically, about what it would mean if she arrived, about how her presence would accelerate the timeline, about what he needed Ko Jung to believe before she got there. You sat up in bed, fully awake. The thought arrived in full detail, the way they sometimes did, when someone thought something with enough conviction and enough proximity of intent. He wasn't nearby, he was in the other villa, but the thought was loud, because it was important to him, because he'd been turning it over for days. He'd approached Ko Jung because of what Ko Jung meant to Gu Qinghan. That was the whole shape of it. You sat with this for exactly 2 seconds. Then you picked up your phone and sent a message to second sister. It said, "Don't come to visit yet." Her reply came fast. Why? You thought about how much to say, about what could be proven and what couldn't, about the difference between warning someone and making a decision for them. You typed, "Because when you come, it should be on your terms, not someone else's timeline." A pause, longer than the others. Then, "Tell me what you know." And so you began. Outside, the mountain held its position against the sky. The production crew finished arranging their equipment. Ko Jung turned another page of his script. Gu Huai smiled at someone who smiled back, comfortable and unguarded. Below your window, the valley stretched on, unhurried, enormous, keeping its own counsel. You typed. And the day began. Second sister's reply came in pieces, not all at once. She was processing, which meant she was being careful, which meant she was taking it seriously in the way that Gu Qinghan took everything seriously, with the full weight of her attention and none of the panic that a lesser person might allow themselves. The first piece, "How long have you known?" You replied, "I suspected from the beginning. I confirmed it recently." Second piece, "Ko Jung doesn't know." You replied, "No, Ko Jung believes he found a friend." Third piece, slower. "Gu Huai told him things about me, shaped how Ko Jung sees me before I even arrive." You didn't confirm this out loud. You didn't need to. Second sister was arriving at the truth by her own path, which was better. Things you arrived at yourself held differently than things you were told. Then, what does he want from this? And this was the question that mattered. Not what he'd done, but why. Because the why was the architecture. The why told you the full shape of the plan. You thought carefully about what to say. In the end, you typed, "He wants access. Through Ko Jung, through you, through your family's position. He's been building proximity. You were never incidental to this. You were the point." A very long silence. Long enough that you wondered if you'd said too much, if the directness had landed wrong. Then, "I need to sit with this." You said, "Take your time." She said, "Don't tell the others yet. I want to handle this myself." "Okay," you said. And Chen. A pause. "Thank you." You put the phone down, looked at the ceiling again. The mountain wind had stopped. The room was very still. You thought about Gu Qinghan, about the specific kind of person she was. Someone who had learned early to be precise because imprecision had costs, who had built a professional life on the assumption that she could trust her own judgment, who had then placed that trust in someone who had not earned it and was now sitting with the particular humiliation of having been right to doubt and wrong to proceed anyway. That was the hardest kind of knowing, not the dramatic betrayal kind, the quiet kind, where you realized the doubt you'd always had was the correct instinct and you'd overridden it. Second sister was going to be okay. You were certain of that. She was the kind of person who processed things completely and came out on the other side with her spine intact. But okay was not the same as uninjured, and you felt that difference. Somewhere. You got up, got dressed. The production day was starting. Downstairs, in the main villa's common area, the crew was assembled and the director was moving through his notes with the focused energy of someone who had 12 things to accomplish before noon. The cast filtered in. Ko Jung appeared with his script. Gu Huai appeared with his easy smile. You sat down with your own script and a cup of tea and said nothing to anyone, but you listened. Gu Huai's thoughts that morning were structured, satisfied. He'd had a good night, a productive conversation with Ko Jung that had set several small things in motion, and now he was waiting for them to develop. His patience was a kind you recognized. Not the patience of someone comfortable with waiting. The patience of someone who'd learned that timing mattered more than speed. Ko Jung's thoughts were simpler on the surface. He was thinking about his scenes today, about technique, about whether his instincts about a particular emotional beat were correct. But underneath, in the quieter register, he was thinking about Gu Qinghan, about when she might visit, about what she'd think of him here. You watched both of them and thought about chess, about pieces that didn't know they were pieces. The director called the first scene. You stood, walked to your mark. The servant character's first appearance in the drama was a background moment. A transition scene. You were supposed to carry something across the room. Pause. Leave. 3 seconds of screen time, maybe 4. The camera would barely find you. You carried it across the room. You paused. The director called cut. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, to no one in particular, "Why did the focus pull to her?" The camera operator said, "She changed something. I don't know what. She just..." The frame went to her. The director looked at you. You were already back at your starting position, waiting. "Do it again," he said. "Exactly the same. You did it again." The frame found you again, for no obvious reason. You hadn't changed your path, hadn't slowed down, hadn't done anything technically different. You had simply moved through the room with the specific quality of attention that made cameras follow without being asked. The director made a note. The assistant director leaned over. "That's going to be a problem." "Or a solution," the director said. The morning proceeded. Scene by scene. You moved in and out of the frame as required. Watch the other actors work. Ko Jung was genuinely good, the kind of actor who found the real thing underneath the technical requirement, and let them both be present simultaneously. Gu Huai was technically impeccable and emotionally surface level, which was exactly right for his character, but which you clocked as being exactly how he operated in life as well. Performance is revealing. Always. Not what people play, but how they play it. What they reach for instinctively. What they avoid. Gu Huai avoided vulnerability, instinctively and consistently. His character was supposed to have a moment of genuine fear in the second scene. He blocked it, very skillfully, turned it into something that looked like fear but was actually controlled tension. Technically correct. Emotionally false. The director didn't call it. It was close enough to pass. You didn't call it either. You filed it. At the lunch break, Ko Jung ended up sitting near you. This hadn't been a choice exactly. The seating at the long table had filled from the ends, and you'd both arrived in the middle of the rush, and there you were. He didn't say anything for a moment. Ate his rice. Thought about Gu Qinghan, then stopped himself, then thought about his next scene, then looked at you sideways. You kept eating. "You're Gu Cheng," he said finally. "Yes. You're the one doing both roles." "Yes." He considered this. "That's unusual." The director thought it was interesting. "Do you think it's interesting?" You thought about it honestly. "I think the servant and the secondary lead are different versions of the same question. What does it cost to be unseen? What happens when you stop allowing it? So yes, I think it's interesting." Ko Jung was quiet for a moment. His thoughts moved in a direction you hadn't expected. He was thinking about invisibility in a personal way, not an academic one. About the feeling of being present and unnoticed. About how that felt different from wanting to disappear. He said, "That's a specific way to think about a period drama." You said, "Stories are usually about specific things dressed up as general things." He smiled, small, genuine, the kind of smile that wasn't performing anything. "Gu Qinghan mentioned you." You kept your expression neutral. "Good things, I hope." "She said you were unusual. Second sister is very perceptive." "She called you second sister?" "She is my second sister." He looked at you, recalibrating. "I didn't know that. She doesn't talk about family much." "No," he said. "She doesn't." A pause. He was thinking about how little he knew about the things she didn't say, about the gap between the Gu Qinghan he thought he knew and the Gu Qinghan who apparently had a family that included someone who talked about stories as questions in disguise. You let the silence sit. Then, "She's careful," you said, carefully, "about what she lets people see." "I know. People who are careful like that usually have good reasons." He looked at you again, a longer look this time. "Are you telling me something?" "I'm eating lunch," you said. He picked up his chopsticks, went back to his rice. His thoughts were moving differently now, less settled, more questioning. The small snag Gu Huai had created last night had grown into something he couldn't place. Something that made the comfortable story slightly less comfortable. Good. That was good. The afternoon shoot brought everyone back together. The director was moving faster now, trying to capture a series of outdoor scenes before the light changed. You stood in your positions, ran the scenes. The mountain backdrop made everything look like something painted with intention. During a break, Gu Huai appeared beside you. He did it casually. The way someone who is not being casual makes themselves seem casual. He stood with a bottle of water and watched the crew rearrange equipment and said, as if he just thought of it, "You're close with Ko Jung. We ate lunch in the same area," you said. "He seemed comfortable with you." "People are usually comfortable or they're not. I don't know what I contribute." Gu Huai smiled, the particular smile that was meant to suggest warmth while communicating nothing. "You're modest." "I'm accurate," you said. A small pause. He was recalibrating, not showing it. His thoughts were quick. She's not going to play along. She's not going to be charmed. What's the angle? There was no angle. That was what he couldn't process. "Your sister is visiting the set next week," he said. "Gu Qinghan." You said, "I know." "Ko Jung is looking forward to it." "I imagine. They have an interesting connection." His tone was textured, not quite suggestive, just layered. Like he was offering you something to react to and watching for the reaction. You said, "Ko Jung seems like a good person." Gu Huai's smile didn't change. But something in his eyes did. A small recalculation. "He is. I think your sister could really trust him." There it was. So smoothly delivered. So apparently genuine. You looked at him directly, not aggressively, just directly. The kind of eye contact that says, "I heard you. I understand what you're doing, and I want you to know that I heard you." Gu Huai held it for exactly one beat too long before looking away. "The light's coming back," you said. "I think they're about to call us." You walked back to your mark. Behind you, Gu Huai stood very still for a moment. His thoughts, when they reached you, she knows something, or she thinks she does. How much does she know? Where did she get it? Does it matter? Does it change anything? You thought, yes. It matters. Yes. It changes everything. You just hadn't shown him that part yet. The evening arrived cool and sharp. The crew wrapped for the day. The cast scattered to their respective villas, to their respective private orbits. You walked back through the connecting path between buildings and stopped midway to look at the valley. Below, the lights of small settlements marked the geography in dots and clusters. Everything up here was quiet, clean, the kind of air that made your lungs feel newly made. You stood there for a minute, maybe two. Then your phone rang. "Big sister." You answered. "You haven't called," she said, her version of hello. "I've been on set." "I know, third sister told me. She said you did 2 roles and the camera followed you without being asked." Third sister embellished. Third sister never embellishes. She exaggerates, but only by a little. A pause. "Are you eating properly?" "Yes." "The mountain gets cold at night." "I know." Another pause. Longer. The specific Gu Wanqing pause that meant something was coming that she had not decided how to frame yet. "The coins," she said finally. "Qing Shui is working on it." "I know she is. I'm not calling about the coins." A breath. "I'm calling because I've been thinking about what you said, at dinner, about people who don't give up easily." You had said that about her. About the love letter. "I didn't mean anything specific by it," you said. "You always mean something specific," she said. "You just sometimes don't say which specific thing." Fair. Wanqing. You used her name without the sister title. She'd been Wanqing in your thoughts all along. Whatever you're deciding, you don't have to explain it to anyone, including me. A very long pause. Then, "I know." Her voice was quieter. "I just wanted to say, you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone to manage. Someone to explain things to. Someone who needed more." A pause. "You don't need more." You thought about the original Gu Cheng. About the girl who had grown up needing everything and getting almost none of it. About the empty apartment that had been home for 18 years. "I did," you said. "Before. I just learned to stop waiting for it." Gu Wanqing was quiet for a long moment, then, "You're home now." 3 words. From the sister who didn't say things she didn't mean. Something behind your sternum did a strange, soft thing. "I know," you said. "Good," she said, and hung up. You stood in the mountain dark with the phone in your hand and the valley below you and the cool air all around and thought, "I know. I know." Tomorrow the cameras would roll again. The drama would continue. Gu Huai would continue his careful architecture. Ko Jung would continue hoping. Second sister would continue processing. Third sister would call later with some update about the coins delivered in 300% more words than necessary. Mom would text something practical about whether you were sleeping enough. Dad would not text but would tell Mom to ask you. The production would build its story layer by layer, and you would be the constant, in every room, seeing everything. But right now, just for this moment, you stood on a mountain in the dark and breathed the clean cold air and let yourself have this. A family, a real one, still messy, still mid-chaos, still carrying their secrets and their loves and their small private disasters. But yours. All yours. You looked up at the sky. Clear out here, away from city light. Stars the way they looked before electricity decided to compete with them. Thought, big sister, who wrote a letter she never sent and kept it because letting go is harder than holding on. Thought second sister who trusted her doubt and is now learning to trust it further. Thought third sister, who broke things and replaced them badly and is now trying to make them right because underneath all the chaos she genuinely loves the people she keeps accidentally injuring. Thought dad, who hid money in walls and sofa cushions and curtain rods out of fear, not deception, and who said nothing when porcelain broke because his daughter's face was enough. Thought mom, who carried every single one of them simultaneously and made it look effortless and took credit for nothing. Thought Gu Hua, who was golden and uncomplicated and deserved someone who could meet him there. You put your phone in your pocket, turned back toward the villa. Tomorrow the story continued. But tonight was just this. The mountain, the stars, the family that was waiting for you to come back to it. You walked back through the dark. And somewhere in the other villa, Gu Huai sat at his desk, reviewing his plans, unaware that the variable he'd failed to account for was already 3 steps ahead. Unaware that in this story, the real one, the one underneath the drama and the cameras and the careful social maneuvering, the most important person in every room had already been watching, had already been waiting, and was only just beginning.